Welcome to Strike a Chord, Eureka Ensemble's official live podcast, where we take a deep dive into important issues facing our community, the latest currents in the classical music world, and how music can strike the right chord in engaging with these issues. For this episode, we're speaking with Eureka violist Mira Williams about her experiences building a career in music, with hosts Alcine, Toda-Ambaras, Britney, Alcine, and I'm Kristo, Kondakçi. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, folks.
Hey.
You like that? That's our new intro.
Yeah.
Your voice was so ASMR.
Yes, I was trying to go somewhere between my NPR voice and a sinus infection.
In that case, you achieved it.
Anyways, hello, welcome to our second episode for Strike a Chord. We have a wonderful guest today, Mira Williams, a violist that has played with us multiple times. It's currently recording a few things for upcoming Eureka events. Mira, how are you doing today or tonight?
Very well. Very soothed by that intro,
yeah. I'm glad. And then we have our co-founder, Alcine Toda-Ambaras, and our assistant conductor, Britney Alcine. And Britney, do you want to share your chord of the week?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to reach with my left hand, but the chord of the week today is D major 7. Yeah, I'm in the upper register because it's off to my left, but hope you all could hear that.
Tinny.
What does D major 7 sound like to you, Britney?
Well, I mean, Alan gave a great descriptor.
I think that was
since
a piano,
it's so
not
high.
the chord.
Tinny, yeah. But I don't know, I like D major is just such a great key for strings, and I like 7th chords. It just adds that extra tint of color that, you know, you don't get from a usual or regular triad. So I always try to add a little something. Yeah.
Nice. Like a bit of paprika, right?
Oh, I love paprika. One of my favorite spices, really.
Cool. Well, thank you, Britney. We're going to do a little team building thing that I did with another group of mine earlier this week. And so we're going to go around. You have 3 prompts to answer. The first one is, what color describes your mood today? Second is, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And the third is, what's a memorable, embarrassing musical moment that you've experienced in concert or rehearsal? Alan, since you decided to volunteer, why don't you start first?
Well, the last one is tricky. I mean, I want to get hired again for music events, so I got to be careful.
Alan,
right,
this is like, you know, AA. It's Artist Anonymous. It's just live over Facebook. So
right, and the names
Their
are
full names
exactly
listed.
Yeah, should have thought of an alias. Yeah. So favorite color, I usually say purple. I think.
No, not favorite color. What's the color that represents your mood today?
Oh, right, color that represents my mood. Silver. I think there's something about it that's a little, you know, I guess nebulous and all, at the same time it's really cool, I think, and it represents something kind of how should I say it?
Like a snowstorm, which is what is happening outside right now.
I would have said white.
Nebulous and cool.
Yeah, but that's just what I'm feeling. I don't really have a rational explanation for it. That's just, yeah.
First musicians and their rational feelings.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, should I go on to the next question, or are we?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
All right. So
favorite ice cream flavor.
Favorite ice cream flavor. Oh boy. Maple walnut. Maple walnut's a good one.
Wow.
Yeah. It's sweet, but there is a little complexity there in the flavor. And last,
just like your cello playing.
Oh, thank you.
That is nice.
That's very
wow.
Just a little bit of flavor. That's the thing.
And last, what was the last question?
Embarrassing musical moments.
Right.
We're hoping to forget that one.
Yeah. No, it's been seared into
the moment or the question?
So Kristo knows about this one because it happened with him. I wish I could blame him for it, but I can't. It was a performance of Handel's Messiah that we did a while ago, and one of the movements had a tempo marking that we had rehearsed pretty frequently and rigorously, and then and when the final performance came around, I very
As principal
convincingly
cello.
started. Yes, I very convincingly started playing at, was it half tempo?
At exactly half tempo.
Exactly half
It's
tempo.
a series of
I love
16th
it.
notes, and it's supposed to start da 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 da, and then Alan goes da 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 da.
But I think it was a testament to my leadership skills in that moment that so many other people followed me.
And somehow we got back on together.
Yeah, no, that was
And it's
very
embarrassing because I wrote the time signature in all the parts in color. So
had a long
that
week.
wouldn't happen.
I had a long week. I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. Anyway, that was me.
Great. Thank you, Alan. Mira, do you want to go next?
I'll go next. Yeah.
What color describes your mood?
Yeah. I'm gonna say like an electric green or something. I feel kind of energized. I probably don't seem that way, but I am. This is like a 10 for me. And yeah, I feel good. I think the snow is really energizing. It does feel very silver, very magical.
I
And
love the
then
snow
ice
too.
cream. Yeah. Ice cream wise, big fan of coffee, ice cream. But
Solid.
I'll honestly eat anything. And it will be my favorite while it's in my mouth. The last thing was embarrassing. This doesn't actually have to do with playing, but I used to play in a group with my cousins, and we had a gig in like one of the most beautiful places in Chicago. It's on the Midway like thing in University of Chicago, and we were playing at a wedding, and it was just like, like the post-wedding vibes for a gig are very like, it's like you just got married, like everything is great, nothing can go wrong. And I was playing violin and viola at the time, so I had two instruments, left both instruments at the wedding, and like went home, and then suddenly was like, oh wait, I'm a musician.
That's an amazing wedding gift right there.
The
There
wedding
you
must have
are.
been so good
Instrument.
though that like you were just so inspired that you forgot.
I was literally like, I don't need to play anymore. I've done what I've done, and here's my gift. Yeah. But someone I think returned them to like the U of C cops, and they gave them back to me.
Wow, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll go next. My color and it was the same earlier this week, but I want it to be orange, which is bright and warm and welcoming, but it's something more like muted orange or burnt sienna is my color tonight, because it's a really chill day, but still a little bit of warmth, and love. My favorite ice cream that I've ever had, I had it last fall, and it might shock you, but it was red bell pepper ice cream, and I had
Of
it
course
up
it
in
was.
Vermont, and it's literally the best thing that I've ever had. It's like it was fruity and citrusy, but had like that earthiness that red bell peppers have. I was shocked because you weren't expecting. They say red bell pepper ice cream, and that was not. Your mouth expects something else.
Was it real ice cream?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, not like a substitute of some kind.
No, it was real
Okay.
ice cream.
All right. Wow.
And my embarrassing musical moment, I can't believe this is going to be live. But mine, hands down, I have a lot. But hands down, last year, and Britney was there, unfortunately for me, at UMass Amherst. We were doing a concert. I think it was the Berlioz concert, Britney. And Amherst is 100 miles away, or 2-hour drive from where I live. So when you start driving to go there, you're going to be there all day. So I pack all my concert gear, get in my car in the early morning, and go to Amherst for the day. And concert was what, 7:30 p.m. Brittany?
7:30, I think.
Yeah, I get into the green room at around 6:30 p.m. and get my like tuxedo case thing out, get my jacket out, my shirt, and I couldn't find my pants, my tuxedo pants. I had left them in Boston at my house. And Brittany comes in, or I go to her, and she gives me probably the strongest eye roll I've ever received in my life. And the concert's like less than an hour away. And so I jump into my car and I go to I see that there's a TJ Maxx open. And it's Amherst, Massachusetts. There's not things that are open all the time. And I'm also 6'4", so it's really hard to find pants that are tall enough, especially that work on stage in front of everybody. Nothing at TJ Maxx. I go to some suit store that I found. I forgot, Joseph A. Banks, I think it was. It's like open. I literally rush in. The concert's less than half an hour. I say, I need pants. And this like guy who's taking in tux rentals is like really takes pity on me and starts helping me, and he gives me a few pants. They're all too small. And he said, I just have a pair of pants that got returned that are untailored. And so they're really, really tall at the bottom. But they're like a size and a half short, or like too tight. And I said, just let me try them. And they were like just barely fitting. I said, I will take them. How much? Whatever. And he says, just take them and give them back to me tomorrow. And so I hightail it back to the concert, and let's just say I've never felt an orchestra sound tighter in my life. Never felt tighter. But it was a heart attack, embarrassing moment. And Brittany, your face is ingrained in my memory. Because you were expecting the stage. Oh, great. Yeah.
And it beats the time that you forgot your socks. And I had to lend you mine.
It actually,
Oh boy.
2 weeks later, I had another concert, and it happened again. And with a different orchestra in Boston, for like 5 minutes away from my house. And one of the violinist's children, I think he was 9 at the time, because of this pants incident that repeated itself, he got me a little checklist book for Christmas with 5 check boxes, like glasses, baton, so I could like checklist before get all my pre-concert stuff. Glasses, baton, scores, pants, and pants was listed twice in different parts of the checklist. Okay, sorry. Brittany, you tell us what color explains you today.
Sure. I would say brown is my color, which is like, brown could be nice, but it's chill, but also not really what you expect. And I think that's what today has been for me in a lot of different senses, Yeah.
It's also really grounded. Like when I think of brown, I just think of like chill, but like solid in place.
Yeah. That's a nice spin on it.
Yeah.
Like a tree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Favorite ice cream flavor, hands down, chocolate chip cookie dough.
Yes.
I love it so much. And
the ice cream or the dough? Like both.
both. Talenti Gelato makes some really good chocolate chip cookie dough because it's not like little chunks. It's got like a swirl of the chocolate and then like bits of the cookie dough around. It's really good. It's so good. Also, it's gelato. And embarrassing musical moment. I mean, I have too many to count. A lot of them are just like tears in time. Or like if I'm rehearsing an ensemble, it's like I feel most embarrassed when I'm like saying something and they don't start where I said, or I wasn't clear on where to start. But I'm gonna go with multi-bands last year. Kristo, actually had a couple of student conductors conduct some of the matinees, and I got to do one of them, and we did the march from Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique, and
What a
with
movement.
with it, yeah, it's fast, but multi-bands is just very fast paced, so it was suitable for the
Multi-band is
occasion.
where every single ensemble in the school plays inside like an hour period.
Yep,
So you're like
every
jumping on
combo.
and off stage, and there are like 400 screaming children in the hall.
Yeah. So I get on the podium and I'm like, all right, we're gonna start. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna start. And I start, and the percussion's with me. The horns are not. And I look to them and I'm like, are you playing? And I think they do the second time, but the first time, and I overhear like conversation afterwards. It's just like, yeah, they did not. And I'm like, well, we had to go, you know. But after the fact, I'm like, okay. It's just one of those things where it's like, it happened, but I wish it could have gone better. Yeah.
I'll have
So
those.
sorry.
Don't apologize. It's the way the cookie crumbles.
It's horns too. It's like playing the horn is like trying to shoot a 3-pointer every single time you play a note. But you guys are violists, so you would know a lot about that. Sorry.
I played
I
horn
love
for like a
violin.
month
So sorry.
or two,
Really?
so
Oh.
I get it. Yeah, I played mellophone for some months, and I played horn in like one of my ed classes in undergrad. So I get it.
Yeah.
I get
Great.
it.
All right. So let's get into the thick of things. Why classical music? How has your experience been growing up in this field? And why are you still in it? Mira.
All three questions at the same
That
time,
last,
please.
yeah.
Yeah.
Take a deep dive. Let's tell us your story about
Right.
how did music, become a part of your life, and
Hmm.
what's been the driving factor for you, and challenges that you've had to experience.
Right. I started when I was 3,
Wow.
as like probably most of us did, right?
It's 4.
4,
10.
10.
Well, sort
Okay.
of.
That's
Also,
like
10, well, sort of for me too, but I didn't have actual real lessons until I was 14.
I didn't have real lessons till I was 16, 15, 16.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mira, you started when you were 3?
okay.
No. Tell us your story.
I'm sweating. I'm also had such a head start, nothing to show for it. No. Yeah, I
What?
started
No.
when I'm just saying you guys are amazing. That was a compliment. I started when I was 3, and I have more than 2 cousins, but 2 that were in my age group that one played violin, one played cello, and so we played a lot together. That was kind of the bulk of my formative education. But I started with Suzuki because my mom wanted me to. Does anyone at 3 do anything else because their mom doesn't want them to? Whatever. And yeah, I think I didn't understand. So I started on the violin, and I like did Suzuki stuff, and then had private lessons through that, but was kind of not super serious in my own right. I think up until I was around 10, which is also when I started playing viola, because everyone was like, your wingspan is literally too long for a 10-year-old.
It's that. Yeah, it is. Yep.
I'm like 5'10", so it made sense. And yeah, so I started playing both, and then when I was like 12 or so, everyone was like, "Okay, clearly you're a violist. Just like forget the E string, you don't need it." And so then I switched at that point, and simultaneously became serious. So yeah, violin was like my gateway drug, and viola was like, oh, I found it. Like, this is it. And I'm not like, I think my experience does feel very like personal to the viola herself. Like the viola is what made me is what makes me a musician, and what makes me feel like I have a weird symbiosis with an inanimate object.
Well, it's like amplified your voice, your very personal voice in a very beautiful way, in a sense, right?
Amplified, sure, yeah. And maybe like, I don't know, I've never really connected to like the voice argument. It definitely feels like a tool or like an animal. Like it doesn't feel human in a way where we're enmeshed. It feels like we're a machine with compatible parts or something.
I like that comparison to a tool because, I mean, people talk about musicians as tradesmen sometimes, and you think about like carpenters and people that work with wood and metal and, create these things, whether it's houses or actual like things that you have within your house or in galleries and museums, and, the tools that they use helps them to create that art. So, an instrument as a tool, I think, is fantastic.
Also, the band Tool has a really good explanation for why they're called Tool, which is that they want you to use their music as a tool and kind of like, work out your stuff, which I really like as an approach to lots of things.
But at the same time, like instruments, you mold yourself to them, and actually they kind of the instrument changes according to how you use it too. So in that sense, that's symbiosis is very, it's an evolving thing, and it's kind of organic in a way that maybe just a simple tool might not be. But which is not to like refute anything you were saying. It's just another dimension to it.
Yeah, and like thinking of it as a categorically different, like we're two strangers meeting rather than like, I don't know why that's important, but it feels like that keeps it fresh or that keeps it new. Like this is a thing that is fundamentally unknown and strange that I must run a marathon to know.
If it is a tool, which I totally love that image, because even thinking of watching string players, the way you guys tune your instruments and tighten the hairs on your bow, is like watching a craftsman prepare literally tools to do a job or something, right? So what is it a tool for then?
Really good segue. I'm
a conductor. Transitions are kind of the
anything and everything. I think that's like a huge question, and I needed a tool to whittle it down. I think I don't know. I can answer the question in so many different ways.
It's very context driven, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like depending on the kind of performance you're doing or the kind of experience that you're trying to inhabit.
Or like what point you're at in your experience. Like when I was 3, it was probably like a piece of plywood that I did not have any like fundamental understanding of. That was also maybe like an emotional connection to like pleasing the people around me who wanted me to do it, And then when I was 5, I was like, oh, this is cool, and I have some autonomy. So then you're like growing a sense of yourself, and then it becomes a tool for like an extension of your agency or something like that, or the thing that makes you special. And then a couple of years down the line,
of your voice. No, I'm sorry.
We have to go there. We're gonna fight after
this. Voice box, as it were.
Well, I just love the metaphor that represents in like, because kind of that's how we grow, or how our consciousnesses grow, right? Because like you don't really know what your consciousness, and it is like a piece of brain plywood when you're 3. And then like the more you grow up, the more autonomy you have, the more you have agency in the world and are able to create and manifest and express yourself, right?
Right.
And
right. So the instrument is your therapist. It's kind of growing up with you. Your Freud, if you.
Your personal Freud. That sounds frightening.
Get out of my house, Freud. Yeah.
All right, so you left us when you were 9 right now? Or you said 12?
I stopped playing violin when I was like 12-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was also when I I have a 6-year age difference between my oldest cousin who I was playing with in that group. And so when she went to college, I guess my intentions had to pivot a little bit because that wasn't the focus of my life. And so I started working. I don't think I've ever liked being a soloist. Surprise, surprise, I'm a violist. And I found, like, if the viola was like the first piece of the, or like the second to last missing piece of the puzzle, the last missing piece of the puzzle was like finding chamber music and finding quartets. Weirdly, the first quartet I played was Mozart Dissonance, with the first movement. And
that was the first quartet you played? Wow.
Yeah, I don't know who set that up. Also, the first quartet I was in was called the Ham and Cheese Quartet, because it correlated to like the initials of our name and stuff.
I love it.
Nice.
And we dressed as, like, I was the lettuce and I had a green shirt. Somebody had like a red shirt with the tomato. It was very cute.
Oh my God, I love
That's
it.
adorable.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wait, was that Highland Park? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now we're like a Croix Madame Center. We've evolved. No. Yeah. So that was at my teacher's festival in Vermont, and I went there for a few summers and did different quartets, and like really was like, oh, this is like why I was put on this earth. I got it now. And I think also that one of those summers Michael Jackson died, and like the trio I was in with my cousins when I was younger, we played a lot of pop medleys, and one of them, because my aunt plays piano and did some arrangements for us, she arranged a medley of Michael Jackson songs, and it was Billie Jean, Human Nature, Thriller.
Wow.
And
I love Human Nature.
Really beautiful song. Obviously, I played the melody because viola. Yeah, and so anyway, that summer, I don't know, I was just kind of like playing notes on the page. I think at that point, I didn't really have any connection to any of the musicians behind the music, or really the music to any like fundamental extent. And so I remember one of those summers when he died, my mom like called me, and I was like 11 or something, and had my little like Motorola hot pink razor. And she called me and was like crying about how devastated she was that Michael Jackson died. And I was like, I hadn't, I think, encountered that kind of emotion from I guess someone whose opinion mattered so much to me about like, I think I was correlating celebrity with that kind of connection that people have to musicians, rather than like a fundamental, like, this person, like Michael Jackson's from Gary, Indiana. My mom grew up in Chicago. She saw him when they were part of Jackson 5, and then like his whole evolution as a human being and as a performer and as a musician. I think she related to a lot, and I think all, like, I don't know, I feel like everybody, I think we like celebrities so much because we can relate to them, and because they put themselves out there to be relatable. And so it's easy to kind of find through lines in the kind of parasocial relationships we have with them. So anyway, I was like kind of floored by just that display of heartfelt sorrow from her. And at that point I was like, oh, this is like, I have to have a different relationship myself with how I'm with who I am as a, also like, what am I? Am I a performer? Am I an interpreter? Am I a musician? I'm not a composer, so I have to be something in between, and somehow it has to relate to people through all of the kind of impenetrable layers that exist between human beings. I forgot the question.
Well, you describe your musical story, right? And
Right,
any challenges you felt, because so now we're getting to college almost, right?
Hold on, let me just take a step back for a moment. You said this kind of thought process began when you were 12? How old?
I mean, I wasn't like going through all these emotions then, I don't think, but yeah, I would have been maybe how old are you? Like 5th grade, like 10 or 11, 12-ish.
So you began to like interrogate like what kind of a role within the music world you want to occupy at a very young age. That's pretty impressive. Wow.
So at least at that point in your life, how did you see yourself primarily? As a performer, as an interpreter, and like what role do you like? You know, you said earlier you realized like why you've been put on here, you know, or I forgot how you phrased it, like, but you've been put here to do what is what I'd be curious, like,
Right.
and how has that evolved?
I think I'm almost never finding answers to anything. I'm just like finding more questions that make me want to bash my head in. So I think then I was understanding that this was more than just like hanging out with my friends. It was a very like rudimentary change of just like, this is a fun thing that everyone around me is doing, so I'm doing it. To like, I as an individual have agency and then have potential to, I guess, use, maybe agency is the wrong word, but just like, of all of these options, which ones do I pick, or can I pick, or should I pick to, I don't know. So if it's a tool, maybe it's a Swiss Army knife. And at that point I was like, you know, kind of pulling out the little things. I don't think I've ever had a Swiss Army knife. There are like little things, right? Like
Yeah. The corkscrew, the blade.
yeah. Things were unfolding, and I was seeing possibility. I don't know if I was choosing specific, you know. But yeah.
So ultimately, what did you come to love so much about chamber music as your thought process was maturing on the subject?
I mean, everyone has a good quote about why somehow that formation is so extraordinary. And I don't know, I feel like the one I always remember is just like, it's just like the best conversation that I've always just felt more comfortable, I think, listening. And maybe quartets, by virtue of there being notes on the page for me to play, like a specific task. I don't know, it's so many things at once. It's like a huge sea to jump in and kind of never come out of. Like there's something like terrifying about the ocean because you've never seen the bottom. There's a quality that's unknowable about, I think, quartets, because there's kind of an impression that you can know there are only 3 other people. You're staring them right in the face. It's by definition intimate. You necessarily have to, you know, look in each other's eyes and like have a vibe and like
depend on each other.
Depend on it. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's vulnerability.
Or at least the life of the piece that you're playing.
Hey, Mira and I know something about that from the last week.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also something incredible. Like you spend like 3 rehearsals together, and you like know someone in a different way than you've ever known someone, even though you've only spent, you know, a couple of hours together. And then if you choose to like make a life out of that, it's just like a giant project to commit yourself to, in a way that I like to do. I don't know. I like to do it. It's fun.
Gives you joy.
That sounds like a great segue into discussing making it, you know, your life's project, a profession, whatever you call it. How's that going? I mean, it's such an interesting time to be. Interesting might be a euphemistic word, but it's such a challenging as well as potentially opportunity-filled time to be embarking on a career in this, isn't it? I mean, what's been your experience so far?
Well, like, wait, we just had gotten to high school, right? So between high school and COVID, there is a gigantic bridge in musical growth and development. Because, yeah, I mean, music making in the COVID world, challenge is like the first word that comes to mind, right?
Mhm.
But like Mira,
Actually,
I feel like
totally disagree with that. I think making music has never been easier than now for me. I think this is like my happy place, like having all of the time in the world to
right. But I mean more like making a living with music,
making money
right?
is
Yeah.
not fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to like just the idea of making money, but like finding fulfillment. Of course, we can go back to high school for sure. I would love to hear about it. But that path, like, how has it gotten up to here, and where do you go from here? I guess. Let's go back to high school. That's fine.
I'll try to merge.
Yeah. Sorry, so many questions.
Well, no. So I think I've like never been not in a chamber. So I was with my cousins up until I was like 12ish, and then started doing quartets. Was in a few quartets. The pre-college program that I was in. So high school was rough, as it is for a lot of people. I think the word is dropped out. If anybody has a more graceful word to describe not going to school after 9th grade, let me know. But I stopped going to school after 9th grade. And through that time in middle school and in 9th grade, I was in a few quartets that did a lot of stuff around Chicago. I love Chicago because it's like a huge it's a very large city. That's a dumb thing to say. It's weird kind of comparing Boston and Chicago because they're like so completely different to me. But I think at least in the places that I was in, and I, if possible, I was very lucky. I just constantly was performing, which is the thing that I love to do and I want to do, and I always am interested in. And so I was like very much it was just like very possible that I could see a life doing basically the same thing I was doing all that time in different groups, playing cool rep. We were doing a lot of competitions, blah blah blah. And then didn't go to school after 9th grade. Kind of had to figure out my own like homeschool slash I was taking classes at a college in the city to get my diploma, and then I came to NEC when I was 17 and went to NEC and graduated and was in a quartet that whole time, and that was also a really great experience that I wouldn't have traded for the world, even though that quartet ended, and now I just want to be in another quartet. Who would have thought?
How was the conservatory environment? It was for you outside of like I know your quartet really well, all the members in it from school, but for you individually, what was the conservatory environment like in terms of, did you feel nurtured? Did you feel stimulated? What were any challenges that you had to deal with? Because I know there's an enormous amount of strong personalities. There are an enormous amount of strong personalities in conservatory environments, and having been at NEC my entire life, not as an instrumentalist, I know that there are lots of interesting paths through the forest, shall we say.
Sure. I'd say I felt like I was walking on a dirt path alongside the forest. Like I felt like I was always kind of looking in. And I kind of imagine everybody feels like that, like there's always something happening over there and you can see it, but you can't really dive in. And I don't know if that's just like an outsider mentality that I had that informed my perspective, or if that was like a real experience. I don't know how to delineate that. It's the curse of subjectivity, but
do you really think you had that kind of like outsider-ish mentality
or position?
Yeah.
Because what I've loved from hearing from you about, especially now I've learned a lot about you with respect to chamber music. It's like, because of course you would love it because you started from playing with family. It's like, what a point of intimacy to create, and way of learning and being and making music, and then like just culturing that, nurturing that into something like your quartet at school and beyond makes a lot of beautiful sense.
It should. But ultimately, like, everyone is so different. And it you would expect, or you would hope that things would kind of communicate through osmosis, but almost nothing does. And sometimes being in a quartet is the most alienating experience because you cannot figure out why people who are sitting a foot away from each other in COVID 6 feet cannot just jump into each other's brains and hang out. It's like we're so close. We got the score. We're right here. It's all happening. We're all focused on the same thing. But there's still this fundamental difference that's seemingly impossible to
Bridge.
Exactly. And the chord, the music is the bridge. So we have this kind of special gift, and sometimes I think we just get in our head a lot about it. And I think also sometimes our objectives aren't the same, even though they seem to be, or they're made out to be. But I think I'm not trying to be to give a diagnosis, but I suspect that there are a lot of different people with different intentions coming into conservatories, and there's no kind of charter, there's no letter, there's no manifesto or something that's kind of
like vision, right? Like a philosophy.
There's no vision, there's no worldview, there's no sense of, unfortunately, camaraderie that everyone is committed to kind of setting the pace of or something.
Right. Nurturing, sustaining. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that can be, if you're not on the same page, you're not on the same page. But if you don't talk about being on the same page, then you both won't be on the same page and won't know you're not on the same page. So things can get very strange and stressful.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, all the while you're just trying to create beauty, or
and like that sense of competition can take over pretty easily because everybody else is very competitive in an environment like that, instead of, like you're saying, I'm trying to say lost and lack of camaraderie, the lock.
Yeah.
and like and you're right, I think musicians really do get stuck in their heads.
I feel like sometimes we're not sure if we're at the Olympics.
Right. Well, I was about to say, it's like going back to the craftsman thing. They get so stuck in like the machinations of the music and the instrument and everything. I actually call it the length of the eighth note problem. It's like you're playing this incredibly like delicious, intense, emotionally intense music, especially depending on whatever quartet you're playing, and people are just so obsessed about getting the length of the eighth note right that they're not talking about like what the phrase means and what it feels like and what emotions it causes, right?
I think you should call it the quaver query.
Ooh, I like that.
I like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Quaver confusion, quaver query. I like that.
Quaver quagmire.
Quaver quandary.
Oh.
Ooh, we're really rolling.
You could just say question. You know.
That's it.
The quaver question.
Yeah, which is also like fine. Like I think there's a time and a place for that, and it's also like we'd be remiss, or we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't recognize that as the fundamental promise of classical music or something like that. Like we it's been very clearly made out to be a fine mesh sieve that only the greatest are allowed to pass through. And so it would make sense that we internalize that, and we internalize all the praise that we've gotten when we were younger, and then we're 18 and we're not super cute anymore, and we still need that praise, and so we get a little vicious. And
I have no idea what you're talking about. I only get praise.
It's probably just a viola thing. It's probably just viola. Yeah,
probably.
Oh no,
because
viola is my favorite instrument, by the way. Just so that's why.
You're not just saying that because there's two of us.
No.
Two vicious violas.
Oh my god. Two vicious violas caught in a query waiver query.
As a lower voice, I support the violas myself.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Right. Well, so now you've escaped school. You've graduated, right? And
allegedly.
What is your worldview? And Brittany, I'd be very curious to have your input on this too, as a soon to be
me
graduate.
on Mira's worldview. I cannot answer for
no,
her,
on your worldview, because Mira has graduated very recently, and you're not far from the same
that is true.
moment in your life. So like, what is your music worldview now, and how has COVID evolved that?
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Wait, who?
Who should go first?
I feel like this
let's
is
go with Mira.
Go ahead. We can
I
vote.
was like, that makes me feel so warm. That makes me feel like I'm in a rehearsal where I ask an instrument to do something and nobody knows who I'm talking to.
Let's go with Mira first.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. How has COVID informed my worldview?
What?
So sorry.
Oh boy.
Well,
Sorry.
Why don't we just ask, like, where do you see yourself going from here in this COVID world as a musician? Like, how do you navigate it? What are some of the questions you're asking yourself?
So I think it's important, at least for me, to distinguish: are we talking about musicianship, the music industry, and or like making money, doing something that isn't very lucrative?
I would say just life fulfillment. I mean, if you feel that you need to feel fulfilled by or making money is what fulfills you, then sure. And you want to do that through music. But if not, like for myself, that's not a concern of mine at this point, and maybe that's a detriment. But I do agree with you in your statement that this is a time where creatives are able to be so creative, and so many projects are coming out, and people are ready to receive it. It's hard for conductors, because we need other creatives to be able to do that, and we don't have that. But yeah.
So that's something I've been thinking about a lot. In like maybe it's just because I don't have it. I'm always thinking about the money question alongside the music question, because if I'm going to make a living as a musician, I have to make a living as a musician. So
can I clarify the question there? When you say living, do you mean performance or teaching or some mixture of both? And like, what is your desire? Like when you say you want to make a living as a violist, what's the primary like avenue?
I would like to play the viola, and I would like people to pay me for it. I think sorry, I think I'm
No, I love that. Absolutely.
I think I'm most passionate about live performance and about small chamber music ensemble, whatever. And then thinking about how that can be viable in a world where it is not, or it hasn't been, or maybe in the 20th century where elitism wasn't so taboo. Those quartets could exist and thrive in ways that they maybe can't now, or maybe more murky or something. So in thinking about that, I'm trying to understand if we as musicians in any iteration conceive of ourselves in the media business, in the entertainment industry or business, in this kind of vague atmospheric music industry business. I think I need to know where we're going to figure out how to get there, I guess, in the first place. And then after kind of locating that, I think, well, partly because of that lack of clarity, we don't really have a worldview or an ecosystem at all. We kind of have conservatories that function like
Factories.
Huh?
Factories, basically. They're
Sure,
musician
yeah.
factories. They churn out performers every year at the same rate they have, actually at a higher rate than in any point in the past. But in a job market, if you look at it this way,
Yeah, it's
that doesn't
interesting.
have any work for the most part.
You mean pre-COVID or
Both.
anti-COVID?
It's very hard. Like the starting salary at the BSO is something like $130,000 a year, right? And they'll have open string positions, and they'll invite people to audition. They'll get it down to 2 finalists, and then they'll choose neither of them all the time. It's like those are like the jobs that make you grow, right?
So you've been on the other side of a curtain, I'm sure. What on the deciding side of a curtain? Why do they do that?
Say that again.
Why don't they pick people for jobs?
I don't know. They don't need to. They hire subs throughout the year. They don't need to.
You're saying it's in their financial. It's a financial.
No, it's like they want to wait. They can literally afford to wait until they agree on the perfect person, right? Because it's a for-life position. So there's a lot of subjectivity. But I'm sorry, I don't want to distract from what you were saying before.
It's only helpful to me because I think that's, again, part of the lack of clarity. Is everyone's just like, what is happening? Why is it happening? How do I get around this? So any insight, I think, is helpful for everyone. But
yeah. But like, I would be curious, what do you want to see happen?
Well, I was thinking, I actually feel like conservatories, to me, I felt like a customer rather than something about to be churned out of a factory. I felt like I had to shop around and to analyze the cost benefit ratio or something of going to 2 places that won't give me anything at the end. And I guess all that to say, I think we have to make some footholds in an increasingly privatized world. We have to create infrastructure in an ecosystem that, is a tangled forest. I think if I always think of us in relation to the mainstream music industry, because why wouldn't we? I want to see. I feel like right now we have conservatories, we have concert halls, we have maybe some community music centers that are somewhat adjacent to both of those things. But if you look at the larger music industry, there are competitions, but there are also awards. There are tons of small record labels. There are music scenes that are indigenous to some random town that grows because a couple dudes on a block saw this thing and then they all went there, and then there's all of those people that listen to his music are also vegan and also straight edge and also shave their heads, and there's culture, and there's a conception that we fit into culture somehow, as opposed to kind of rising to the top because we're so excellent and because we should be praised because we're so excellent, rather than we are speaking to people and we are speaking about people, and therefore our music is indigenous to those people. Like our music is finding its roots in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And we're now in a double bind, I think, of like the only exchange value we had was elitism and gate kept promises and like really rich, I don't know, like foie gras or something, but nobody wants to eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And also nobody wants to feel the
Sounds
after.
disgusting. I felt like my acid go up my throat. Foie gras in the morning.
I mean, classical music in the morning wouldn't be that. I'm not saying that the music
I know,
literally like. I'm saying the way that the impression I think that we give people is that of such quality that it is near untouchable and therefore thorny and like you don't even want to try to get into it. And so I want like zines about interesting music that you're into. I want actual cool magazines that people want to read about people's thoughts about different composers or what
podcast
so
we can talk about them.
About that, I think Mira, we spoke about this a little bit before too, but you know, you talked about how you want, you know, a sort of a cool way to disseminate and promote and talk about.
And cool is a trite word, and coolness has been a tool to keep people out of spaces that they would otherwise want to be in as well. So I'm not trying to replicate other systems of power that are not great for everybody. I think.
So what does it mean to you? This word in this case.
What's the word?
Cool.
Cruel?
What's that? We don't have to harp on them.
Oh.
COOL.
Or I think this is code for accessible. But so what would make it?
Alan, does it mean silver to you?
It's too nebulous. Anyway, you were saying, Mira. I'm sorry.
No, it's we don't have to stick to that word. I just think we should stick to something and to see ourselves as something other than people worthy of being praised because we work so hard. Like there has to be something else that we can exchange, especially now because people are saying that isn't what they want anymore. Players who are inside are saying that they're there for a different reason and they want to be received on different terms. I think people have the necessary listening terms that they need to understand and to love pop music, and for pop music to then reflect their experiences, and for like it's a very reflexive system where pop music, big pop music, is listening to its listeners, and its listeners are then saying, "This is what I want," and it's a very reciprocal relationship.
Or symbiotic.
For that.
Positive feedback.
Can I go back to one point you made, like you asked a question about, you know, are we marketers, or like what's are we part of the music industry? What industry are we part of, right? What and then you said, like, you know, we really don't know where we're headed and all that. Like I always think to not wait for what the industry or decides we're headed, right? Like, where do you want to head? Like, how do you see yourself as a musician? Is it as an event producer?
That's funny. I think my main point is that the industry doesn't really exist, and that I want there to be an industry. I want there to be infrastructure. I want, you know, the 100 or so people that, you know, graduate from NEC, 20% of them should be starting their own label and pumping out every couple months an EP with some new composer that they've commissioned some works for, and they should get some funding that isn't trapped in an endowment. There is funding. That's literally the last question that's always on my mind, because like I've been very lucky, but I also know that this is kind of a general. I think everybody has had like some billionaire paying for their experience. Am I supposed to say that?
No.
I'll say it if
It's
nobody
not.
else is doing it. Like,
Look,
my
funding
experience.
funding
Definitely
is like
recommend.
solar energy, which is all about increasing surface area to get sunlight. If you have enough area and ask enough people for support, they will support you. There is as much money out there as you need. It's true. You
Literally.
just have to like kick yourself in the butt and get it.
I
Ask,
think so.
but like, I want to hear from Brittany on all this, because Brittany has been a silent observer and she's amazing.
I'm sorry. I'm like in New Jersey with my family, so there's like a lot of sound happening, muting, unmuting. But also, I
Oh,
just like hearing Mira's like
you have a
input.
marimba
And
in your family house?
my siblings have a marimba in the family house.
I thought you were in a classroom this whole time. Or something. I don't know.
No, this is the ground floor, not ground floor, first floor of the house. But yes.
The ground floor of the estate. I love it. There, but it's like, so you said you want to start the industry, right, Mira? But I'm still very curious, and I have like what I think and I believe, but what is that industry? What's its primary?
It's stuff.
But
It's
is it like,
stuff.
is it event production? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
musicians as sales specialists for themselves? Like, what do you do? What's the product that you're selling?
I also want to add to that question, like, because you have such a strong connection with chamber music and you've been classically trained, do you feel that classical music plays a role in this industry, in this, in this industry that you're thinking of? I know you talked about just an air of elitism that goes with it. Do you think that'll ever go away?
Yes. I'm sorry.
I think there's an error. That's like, yes, monarchy is dead, but its vestiges are still appealing to people. Like we didn't tear down. Where did Napoleon? What was his house? Versailles. Like they
Oh
didn't tear
yeah,
down Versailles just
Louis
because.
the 14th.
Yeah, thank you.
Several
Literally
years.
so wrong. It's like we don't destroy past versions of whatever was considered we're not, when
current-
humans get when humans get to where they think is the greatest thing, when they achieve the apex of whatever form they're invested in, we're proud of it and we're allowed to be proud of it. There's nothing wrong with doing great things that sound good and take a lot of time and take a lot of moving parts to complete. I just think there's kind of an expectation that no longer exists. I'm not sure if it has to do with if we're talking about America, like a national identity. Like classical music doesn't actually speak to like, not to be like pro-nationalist, but like if some of the music,
There's a word I wasn't expecting to hear today.
So this is where I pivot to talking about nationalism and how much I love it. No, I think
Oh my God.
I think like we haven't cultivated our place within culture, and once we do, life will flow. And I think people will become invested in a different way that decenters just the fact that we work so hard and we sound so good, and will center the fact that we are firmly situated in culture. We're creating it, we're breathing it in, we're exhaling it, we are starting it, we're stopping it, we're following trends. Somehow we're just like not supposed to follow trends because we're so good and we're so classical. Like, I don't understand that.
Well, I think there's this tension that you just touched on, which is like, and this is something I think classical musicians often struggle with, is like the sense of cultivating something, right?
Mhm.
Like, culture is there, culture happens, we all have it, but when we talk about culture, put in quotation marks deliberately, often that has, certain connotations that have been passed down as, historical baggage, especially in the classical world for a long time. And I think that's where it gets a little hairy. Like, how do we talk about
You could
that.
say the same thing about genetics.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah, let's not go. We don't have time
Fun
to
things passed down from my ancestors.
So I guess the question is then, like, how do we think about essentially reappropriation or
Well, what is classical music's role in modern day culture, Mira? What is it? Like, definitely we can wait until we see how it fits into the culture, but what is
Mhm.
like for me?
I think I was saying to Alan, like,
Yeah.
I this is my specific thing. So this is not a diagnosis, and this is not me trying to be prescriptive. This is just where I see my part, my small part in a larger scheme. But for me, it's just a sense. I want to have the sense that you do when you enter a space that is different from the one that you normally inhabit, and you kind of envision it as a destination that's going to give you comfort and going to bring you like we look for different art forms because they give us specific feelings. They're very evocative, but in very specific ways. And so chamber music for me, being in live chamber music spaces with groups that are really adept at creating a sense of intimacy, is like the thing that makes the hair on my arm stand up or whatever. And so if that's what I'm trying to cultivate within my own practice, and also like animate as a thing that other people can get into, even though it's not new, like I can't, it's hard for me to think of it just in terms of in the classical music realm, because like literally I just don't see any infrastructure. So I always have to think of like I'm kind of into wine, and natural wine is like very popular right now.
What
of
is
course,
very
like
popular? Sorry.
like natural wine, which is just
wine.
It's
That's
just,
what I said. Okay, yeah.
yeah. Which it
It's
is
very
then,
classical
like
music-y of you.
it's just very like 23. I'm 23. But everybody who's 23 is drinking, I think.
Well, everybody's drinking right now. That's for sure.
Coffee.
I'm drinking wine right now. But like it's not new. It's of course the first wine that was ever created was natural, because it was then synthesized, and then now we're back to this kind of, and it's definitely within a trend of like lo-fi, crunchy granola, save the earth. Fantastic, by the way. We should definitely be going in that direction. But it's like aligned with a worldview and an aesthetic that if you buy into, you can kind of signify. Like I sound like a freaking like PR person who's like reading data sets that were illegally sold to them. Like I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be that, but also of course I am. Like if I want people to listen to me and believe that I have something interesting and important to say, then I have to envision a marketplace that I can thrive in. I'm gonna make my banner bright red, not fade into, not camouflage if I want someone to come see it. And so I do think we have to have some eye towards a sensibility among people that we're trying to appeal to, and then give them stuff, give them merch, give them a space to go to like, this is a really weird example, and like I really should find a better one. And I think I was telling you, Alan, but like there's definitely an infra. I just like haven't taken the time, but there's a movie called Paris, Texas, with Harry Dean Stanton, and I like barely remember most of the movie, but at the end, there's like a kind of iconic scene where he's like venturing through Paris, Texas, trying to find his dad's like baby mama, and he finds her in this, I think it's a peep show, where you like I feel like it's like a trope in movies where like you go through the CD like the video store, and then you open the curtain, and there are all these like there are things happening in the back, and you kind of know what's happening.
Were they all classical albums in the back?
They were all just quartets sitting around waiting for people to come in, and that's the vision. No, but something about that scene and something about that movie is so like savory and so fuzzy and warm. And I don't, in the moment, I think it's part of the kind of thematic vision of that director, but you're kind of within this, you're just kind of thrust into this unexpected scenario, and at the end of it is this sense of immense comfort that you kind of didn't expect. And so I want kind of literally, I want spaces where quartets can kind of exist in daily life, where you can kind of, I don't know, like a cat cafe where you go in, you know, the quartet's gonna be playing, and you sit there and you like vibe for 45 minutes. And
well, I used to, when I was a kid, this reminds me, I used to organize street quartets, and we would play it like, I wasn't playing, but I would organize them because you know, like all the fast movements and like Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, always remind me of like that commuter rush that you're in when you're going from one station to another. So I would organize these street quartets to play at like the MBTA in train stations and all over the place, because I just wanted people to connect that energy with music, right?
And I feel like that's where people are. I think that's what people are thinking now. Like we have to kind of like attack the public with our music. Not that was your vibe, but like I think that's definitely like sorry. Like I think it's like they're not coming to us, so we must we must come to them. But there's also this tone of like we're doing outreach and like
so I like to think of it as we're to meet people where they're at, right? Like I'm not trying to like save people with classical music, because I don't think that makes any sense. But to me, I feel like the future of classical music as an industry is at its intersection with other industries and fields, right? Like music and business. Like the way classical musicians learn their craft is incredibly unique. Like what it takes to play in tune at the right moment, the right time with other people doing the same thing is incredible. And it signifies like connections, like that intimacy that you experience in chamber quartet, in a chamber music group, is something that's lacking in the modern world. There's a problem you can solve by sharing that. So I always like to think about, okay, if you're thinking about where's the future of classical music, I would say, all right, maybe let's reframe the question to what problems are you trying to solve or can you solve?
It's interesting what
Yeah.
that, you know, and I don't disagree with those ideas, but if it becomes a matter of looking at the way musicians navigate the world as opposed to the music itself sometimes, you know, and that's actually and that's not a bad thing at all. That's something I think we should all try to learn from and try to, you know, use to impart or share kind of insights with other people in other sectors. But Mira's question about like what does it mean to like meet people where they're at, I think, Mira, that's what you were getting at, right? I mean, it's not always a clear cut. There's no clear cut answer to that. It's really case by case, I think.
Well, I think there are many answers. Are we telling people what they really want but don't know they want yet because we haven't told them? Do we kind of create a spectacle that's like hard to look away from, and that way you kind of get some weird trickle down and you know, work on those people, and then they, you know, like there are different kind of ways to appeal. And I'm wondering how we can be, I guess, both curators, back to the kind of initial question, are we performers, are we interpreters, are we artists, are we I think maybe we have to see ourselves in like a fundamentally interdisciplinary space or multidisciplinary space where we're trying to insert ourselves in conversations that we already should have been. So it's a little bit retroactive. So already starting from that place, I think we have to be just extremely intentional about how far we're willing to go for the virtue of the hardest art that we want people to swallow. Do we give them the horse pill first, or do we give them the little penny, you know? And so I think, you know, for some people that might mean sacrificing something, and I don't ever want to tell someone you have to do that in order to be appreciated, but I do think if we're committed to this vision that's different from the vision of the past, that is inclusive, that is like categorically against conservatism. Like we can't actually go forward thinking that we are trying to conserve something. I don't know what the classical ideals of classical music are: purity, order,
The authenticism movement,
authenticism.
which I always think is actually should be rebranded as hyper-romanticism, because like people who try to play, like I always think of Beethoven 1,
Not sure
the
of
first
that.
symphony. Do you know the opening of the Beethoven first symphony? It's a dominant seventh chord with a tritone in the top wind instruments, in the oboes and the flutes. And it starts with a dominant chord in a complete different key from what the stated key is, which when it was premiered would have sounded like 18 electric guitars playing like a clashing chord. It's so like pungent and intense, but like trying to recreate the sound of that for 21st century ears is like ridiculous. It's a hyper romantic way of being. To
You
try
mean
to
that the sense of freshness and newness and like the
trying to play it present it exactly as it was written at the time that it was written, which is what being pure really is about in one sense, as the composer. Right?
It's the idea that, like, I mean, we can get close, perhaps in some cases, to recreating the physical sound as it might have been produced back then, but the impact on the audience will be totally different now. So, like, why do we? And I think that's your point, right, Kristo? Like, why do we pursue?
Well, and so can I like, you said, what are we? I like to think of classical musicians as our primary function is to be storytellers, highly skilled storytellers, because and I think one of the reasons why classical music has such a gigantic brand confusion, especially in the modern era, is because the film industry took all the benefits of classical music away. Because if you think of like what a scoring orchestra does, or what's like scores for films, you can name all those tunes and they're all classically written, informed tunes of our tradition. It's really interesting. And like, I think about, I always say this, the image of like, that scene in a movie where the guy and his lover reconnect at the end, and all the music all surges up and you're like in the emotion with them. And I always think about that kind of scene without any music, where it's like, well, that's nice that they reconnected, right? It's happening outside of you, but with the music, you literally feel like you understand what's happening more.
That's not genre dependent, right? It just became kind of canon for classically informed. Really.
Well, I mean, an electric guitar can play Bach, and it's not exactly genre music, but I always think classical music is very much defined by the instruments that we use, which are
classical music is, but you're talking about the emotion evoked through the use of classically informed music in film that transformed our understanding.
Or the tradition, the tradition of composition, the tradition, which is not just the instruments and the performance, but the whole palette of sounds at your disposal.
And that's also changing now too. Like Nicholas Britell is like the film composer everybody's talking about. We were talking about Glass. We were talking about Williams. We were talking about Zimmer. But again, with trends, also like new music, I feel so bad that they're kind of like, under the subcategory of classical. They should have gotten out while they could have. And, like, been understood under the category of like mainstream, because it's not helpful. Like, that stuff's cool. Sorry.
Well, no. So I think about like, what's the role of music, right? And then therefore musicians in those scenarios, which is you're basically helping tell a story. It's just the story's visually in front of you. So if you remove the movie aspect, like that's what you do through your craft with your instrument.
But do you think people are kind of thinking of it like that? Like,
do I think people think about it? No. Of course not.
I'm saying, do you think they're like not going to the symphony because they're like, I could just go see a movie and get both of these at the same time?
No, I think the main reason people do go to the symphony is nobody wants to feel stupid. Like it's like going to a Catholic church and going to mass. You have no idea if you haven't done it before, or have grown up with it, you have no idea what the rituals are or that you have to respect. You feel like an idiot, right?
So you're saying like going to the concert hall is like being invested in religion.
No. But you're going into a highly ritualized experience. You sit down, you shut up, you applaud when the fat man comes from the back of the stage, lights go down. It's highly ritualized. I remember that I had this experience when I first went to a jazz concert, and I didn't know how jazz worked. And everyone was telling me about these forms and all these structures. I felt like a complete total fool. Like I had no idea how to talk. It was actually inaccessible to me. I had to
Wait, why? What were they doing?
Because they were talking about how I didn't know how the improv worked at all. I just didn't know. And it's highly structured. It's not,
like you didn't know when to clap?
Or to clap after solos and things like that. I didn't know what the accepted ritual was. So it was difficult for me to find it accessible at first. But I had a huge personal desire to learn.
I think people want rituals though. What scenario, what space do we enter outside of our own individual spaces that aren't ritualized? Or is there
I totally agree. I'm not saying people don't want ritual, but if you haven't, just like if you don't grow up with soccer, the idea of going to a soccer game is probably way low in your priorities.
I think,
right?
If I may, I think that there's, going back to the whole elitism argument, with classical music, with the genre, and with the experience of going to a concert, there is a unique association between ritual and judgment. And I think that is what makes it such a, an off-putting, even the prospect of it in some cases an off-putting proposition for many people. And I actually remember I was volunteering for the Boston Cultural Planning Initiative a few years back, and there are all these town halls, and that's what many of these people who said, technically they could afford to go to a concert, but they didn't think they would feel at home, and that's what ultimately turned them off. And there was no real, there was no clean way to address that beyond, this idea of going to where they are, where the people are. But that also risks having some semblance of condescension to it. So, I'm basically coming back to the original question. I think if we don't acknowledge that it's not an easily resolvable one, then there's no way forward.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to maybe think about the fact that it was a little bit easier, and the like there was public access TV where like some random person with a mic could get on TV and talk about what they wanted to talk about and cultivate small audiences. I think that's also the part that like we don't need to get 7 billion people invested in classical music because some people don't like it, and that's okay. We can get like some whatever, we can find the people who want us, and that of course has to do with kind of meeting them where they're at. But I think we're gonna have to do a lot more kind of like field work or like litmus research. Like there has to be, I feel like there's too much distance. And so if I'm not giving answers, that's probably why.
I will say though,
like when you, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Mira, I mean, to start by saying that you love it because of this or that, I think that's ultimately, I mean, the solution is always going to be a very personal one, I think. And that's where we begin.
And I would just want to clarify, when you say, and it's a big item, like when you say some people won't be into classical music, what are you defining as the parameters for classical music? Is it playing an instrument like the viola? Is it playing like symphonic works or chamber music works? Like, where are the parameters? Because I feel I've worked with a lot of like kids who've never heard orchestra or touch it with a 6-foot pole even during COVID. But like I've done these workshops where we spend like 40 minutes with a marimba learning how to play what's it called? Heart and soul, right? and they learn how to make a piece. And I describe that to them, the structure of it and why the tune is catchy, etc. And they fucking love it. Like it's something they really feel engaged in, because it's here. I feel like when you say most people won't like classical music, is what are you actually talking about there? Because in my perspective, when I work with people in environments like that, they love it. They adore like you're helping them make something that usually takes a lot of skill to do. You know, like a lifetime of building a skill set.
Is Heart and Soul, is that Mahler or who's that?
I think it's Mozart.
Well,
Happy Birthday is Mozart, right? Isn't it?
Twinkle Twinkle is.
I don't know anymore.
I don't think classical music exists. Obviously, genres don't exist. Like people play some sounds with these instruments that sound similar, and then people play other sounds with other instruments that sound similar to those things. Like we need categorization, we need structure in life, because we don't know if we're going left or right if we don't have words to describe it.
There's a secret, right? That's a secret to life. It's all, we've made it all up. It's basically what you're saying.
Right.
Are we whispering?
Because it's a secret.
It's a secret.
Just for the four of us.
It's the secret.
We can't.
No, we've made it all up. Like we've made the whole industry up. It's literally a figment of imagination. It's a story that we started, that was started hundreds of years ago, and that we keep telling.
Yeah.
That's all a tradition really is.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, do we break or do we stay or do we go? Do we break or do we?
How does that song go?
Should I stay or should I go? Great song. Great song.
All right, we're almost at 9:30, which is kind of crazy, but so I think we should wrap up soon. But I really want to hear from Britney, because what's your everything? What's your take? What questions?
I think I'll just talk on that last point of the non-existence of genres. That's really interesting to think of it that way, just how different sounds have been categorized. But also, just because there's a class that I'm taking this semester and we started talking about the other and how the other helps define the self. So creating these genres help people, listeners, performers, composers, creators define themselves. You know, I know like a few different artists, producers who don't want to, you know, connect to a genre, but how else do they gain listeners? How else can they be with a specific label? I mean, unless they're independent, but even then it's like, all right, well, what do you make? You know, it's like, oh, I make music, I make sounds that I like. It's like, but like, what does that fall into? Like, how can I relate to it? Will I like it? You know, that's someone's immediate thought, I would say.
You know, it's kind of ironic that you have to sort of kind of place yourself in a tradition to seem cool enough to break it and seem new. And yeah, I think many musicians have in classical music world and beyond have tried that. You know, you had the Nigel Kennedys of the world and all those like, you know, punk rocker musician types. But yeah, I mean, there's some amount of artifice, I think, that goes into any attempt to promote. But at the same time, you know, if you're coming from a genuine place of wanting to explore different artistic categories or sounds that mean something to you, then, you know, you find the labels and whatever that work, I think.
And yeah, I don't know. I think classical musicians are just really lucky, because we get to do something that most people never get to do, which is spend hours a day for, you know, decades at a time building one skill set to express ourselves creatively. And most people don't ever get to do that. Even if you're forced into it at 2 or 3, you don't get like that opportunity to spend your time thinking about making music, creating beauty with other people intimately. and expressing yourself creatively out in the world. Like that's
Can I
something.
slightly disagree just to make?
Oh no! Can you like bash me in the face? I'd be very happy. Please don't
We're gonna
slightly.
fight after.
I'm
We're
gonna set a
fight after.
timer. Set a
Look.
timer for the next hour or so.
Look, Mira, I literally like I have no shame, and I don't take anything personally. So throw whatever you got. I like let's yeah.
I'm
And then
just
we
saying.
can wrap up. And I won't sleep
It'll be
all night.
quick.
But I'm just kidding.
I just think like almost everyone has those terms. Maybe they don't have the specific listening terms to like digest. I don't know. Like I don't. I think everybody knows what that feels like, even if it isn't playing the viola specifically with 3 other people. Like everybody's experienced that feeling, and so while they
you
don't
sure?
necessarily
Which feeling? Sorry.
of camaraderie, of intimacy, of a shared language, of working with a tool on something that you love to create something that gives you pleasure. Like I think that's a very
slightly
common
disagree with
experience, and
you on
that's what we
that.
can tap into. Okay.
I think
Be-
you two might have to agree to disagree. It seems like you have 2 different just perspectives on a similar or the same
Conductors and violists.
thing.
Britney, as both, what do you think? No, I mean I agree.
I think
but, yeah, to disagree.
I see both perspectives. I do see, yes, like I recognize that some people, might not or have not had the opportunity to like hone into a specific artistic outlet and get into that. But also I see what Mira is saying in that it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically artistic in the sense of like visual and fine arts and music and all of those things. Or it could be anything else. It could be like just how much attention you pay into like Minecraft. I mean, like a lot of people love playing Minecraft because that's just a free space in which you can explore and you can create and you can, just have a good time. And I mean, I don't play it myself, but I
You can
see,
even go to KFC on Minecraft.
and there's a lot of different or a lot of other opportunities to do things like that as well outside of the fine arts and what is conventionally thought as artistic.
I would just add to that where like, okay, but learning an instrument is very different from going to something that's already set up as a template. Like like playing an instrument is something or drawing art or and all this creative expression stuff. You can't. It's like I always like to say, it's the one thing you cannot Google your way out of. If you don't spend that time with a string instrument for years on end, you won't play in tune. You just won't. You like it shows. Shut up, Mira. I'm not talking about violists. Violists are excused from the intonation part of the conversation.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But like if you but if you don't
off.
spend that time with the instrument, like then it's harder to learn more like complicated music or so
How's
it's
that
like
different than any other repetitive process with a large payoff?
say that again.
How's that different than any other repetitive process with a nice payoff at the end? Isn't that
I don't know if payoff is the right word, but what's another repetitive process that comes to mind?
like for me
Except
artistic
for like intimate relationships with somebody, which are you develop the same way. The more you spend time with somebody in an in-depth relationship and face challenges and all that, the like harder music that you have to end up.
I would say that probably people in academia see what they do as like a creative process where they're building on skills that they acquire over time, right? I mean, that's, it's not unique to... sorry, Mira, I think I interrupted you. My bad. Go ahead.
No, I totally agree. I think I like the idea of like craft and techne imbued with spirit is the basis of any formal project that you come to love and that gives you pleasure. It has to start with a desire to kind of unpeel something so that you can uncover all that it has to offer.
Okay, that was brilliant. Can you repeat that again?
That's a great ending.
It flew out and it's out. It's out. Unpeel the orange, eat the orange. You're an artist.
No, but I 100% like fundamentally agree with that.
Great, we're on the same page. No need to fight.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Such nice reconciliation right there. What a great way to end.
Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. Well, any parting thoughts then? Thank you, Mira, for this brilliant amount of time and for sharing yourself and your story with us.
I'm glad you all invited me. I would love to hear more about what you all have to say. Can you do a solo podcast?
You mean how about we just hop on a Zoom call with coffee and talk? Is that
Can we be friends?
No, so I'd love if you came back, because like the whole point of these things is it really isn't a time limit. We made it up.
No, I'm saying like I want to hear the three of you. I feel like I was talking the whole time. I want to hear what you all have to say. Everyone's like,
I want to hear what Britney has to say.
I think we should wrap it up.
Oh, great. Yeah, we'll continue another time.
No,
Wise words.
Yeah.
Wise words.
Thank you guys so much. This was fun.
Thank you all.
Forward to more soon. Thank you everybody for watching. Somehow I don't understand, but take care. Good night.